pages and pages I hold in my hand tell stories of people from far ancient lands. Chapters and chapters I search to find truth, each a new story that tells what to do. Books upon books with stories to tell, but look closer, the stories tell stories as well. Hidden in verses and phrases and lines, Jesus speaks to my heart and he speaks to my mind. A master of narratives, my God must be, to take life's greatest mysteries and reveal them to me.
This always takes a little longer than I thought. Sorry. So embarrassing. Oh, is this on already? Oh, thank you. Okay. Well, this is great. Oh, thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Is it here to serve? Is this Sunday?
Yeah.
All right. So no, hang on a second. Sorry. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. All right, thanks, man. All right. Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry, you guys. Good morning, everybody. All right. Hang on, my mic is all messed up. Do I have this on right? Hang on, I forgot my Bible. Hang on a second. Okay, I got it. At least I didn't have to go to the bathroom. That would have been... Okay, I don't know if I got this on right. All right, I've never had this happen before, but I just totally overslept, and I forgot it was Sunday. I got a little too much carried away with Bible school this week, and so I apologize. At least I made it here on time, kind of. I'm late, but if not, Jason would have had to preach, so that would have been really bad, trust me. So, I don't. Yeah. Have you ever had like a situation where you knew you had to be somewhere, you knew you had to do something, but either you just totally failed to prepare, or you were totally undisciplined going into it, and so you're just all messed up. Maybe it was a meeting, and you showed up and you were totally not ready for it, or maybe it was a test, an exam, and you showed up and you knew it was coming, and you didn't study, and maybe it was a major paper or presentation, and you just threw it together last minute, and it didn't go very well. Am I the only person these things happen to? Okay, thanks, kids. I appreciate that. I do. I really appreciate it. I'm a little out of sorts because I'm just not prepared. And if you've ever felt that tension of not being ready, not being prepared, and then when the deadline comes, like just that overwhelming feeling that you've experienced, man, you know how troubling that is, And Jesus taught us that at the moment of his return, there are going to be billions of people who aren't ready. So many know that he's coming, have heard that he's coming. So many have been told for years and years and years that the return is going to happen. It could happen at any time. It could happen at any moment. But what Jesus tells us is when that day actually comes, the overwhelming majority of people will not be found ready. Completely caught off guard, completely unprepared. In fact, Jesus goes so far as to tell us that at the moment of his return, he says it's like two men standing in a field and one is taken and one is left, and two women grinding at the mill and one is taken and one is left. He's talking about a sudden coming, like once he returns, like that's it. The men in the field don't get time to go home and order their affairs and ready themselves. The women grinding at the mill don't get time at that point to go home and to prepare their families and their loved ones. When he returns, that is the end. And Jesus talks in several places about the suddenness of this coming. And he even says, in addition to this suddenness of it, like that people are taken, done, that's it, time will be over. You know what else Jesus says? Jesus tells us that when he returns, the entire earth will mourn. Not rejoice, not celebrate, not cheer. They will mourn. Why? Because most of the earth will receive his coming in an unprepared state. There will even be some of his people who will receive his coming in an unprepared state. Jesus will return, and even those who are anticipating and awaiting will be caught off guard in such a way that they will have regret. And the coming of Jesus will not be received with joy and enthusiasm and, yes, Lord, I have been waiting to see you. It will be an, oh no, I can't believe he's already here. And so Jesus tells a string of parables about being prepared when he returns. He talks about the fact that so many people will be unprepared, others will be busy with things, but the return will catch them even off guard. And then he highlights for us what it looks like to truly be found faithful and ready so that we can receive Jesus with joy. I hope today that your posture toward King Jesus is one, that your lives, your faithfulness are such that when the Lord returns, you will not receive him with mourning or shock or disappointment, but you will receive him with joy, for he is coming. Take your Bibles, if you will, and turn with me to Matthew chapter 25 as we look at one of these incredible parables about preparedness in light of the coming of Jesus. Not being caught unprepared, not being found unfaithful at his return, being ready, being excited, anticipating with enthusiasm our master's return. Jesus here in Matthew 25 is talking about the end times. In fact, if you go back to Matthew 24, you find one of my favorite passages in all the Bible on the end times, on what it's going to look like when Jesus returns. He walks through the conditions of his coming, and then in Matthew 25, he tells a string of parables about what it looks like to be ready and to be prepared. And we're going to look at the parable of the three servants, or the parable of the talents. And Jesus here gives us an incredible story to illustrate what it looks like for you and I to not just be ready, but to be overjoyed at the Lord's return. Let me give you a simple takeaway. I hope you'll jot this down. I've got several things I hope that you'll take home with you today with respect to our preparedness. But I want you to see this is what the entire parable of the talents is about, and then we'll look at it, that we are entrusted with gifts and resources in order to yield a return before our master's return. What we're going to see is that you and I have been entrusted with gifts and resources so that we might yield a return before the master's return. Jesus tells the parable of the three servants, or the parable of the talents. We begin in verse 14. Check this out. Jesus says, now again, here's what the kingdom of heaven can be illustrated by. It can be illustrated by the story of a man going on a long trip. And he called together his servants and he entrusted his money to them while he was gone. Notice here that these servants are managing the master's property, and we know that servants had varying degrees of responsibilities in the first century, and here Jesus tells a story that again connects to culture. And it's a story with a real life context, because there were masters with servants with varying degrees of responsibility, and Jesus here emphasizes that the master is going to be on a long journey. There is emphasis in this parable on the duration of the master's trip. He's going to be gone a long time. Look what happens next, verse 15. And so he gave 5 bags of silver to one, 2 bags of silver to another, and 1 bag of silver to the last, dividing it in proportion to their abilities, and then he left on his trip. Now, the word talent there is a word that's translated here, a bag of silver. A talent was not a coin or a specific unit of money. It was actually a weight measurement. It was like, it's translated here, a bag of silver. But here's what you have to understand. A talent was worth a significant amount of money. The bag of silver for the average servant was worth 20 years of labor. That's a lot of money. Just 1 bag of silver, 1 talent, was worth 20 years of labor. And so remember, when Jesus tells parables, often he does 1, 2, or 3 things. In this parable, he does all 3. Number 1, he uses hyperbole or exaggeration to make a point. The fact that the servants are receiving from their master talents is hyperbole. It is a massive amount of money. The one servant receives 5, the second receives 2, the last receives 1. Even the guy that received 1 talent, 1 bag of silver, receives 20 years worth of labor. These are huge amounts of money. Jesus is using hyperbole. Secondly, Jesus will often tell stories with a pattern, and in the breaking of the pattern, we find the meaning of the parable. This parable is going to be no different. And then Jesus often tells parables where the main point happens at the end with some type of shock and awe, and that's what we're going to see. And so I just want to set this up as we're getting into this. I want you to see that this parable starts off with hyperbole. It's going to lead to a pattern, and then at the end, Jesus is going to reveal a shocking truth. And so here's the hyperbole. These 3 servants get an insane amount of money. Huge amounts of money. 5 bags of silver, 1, 2, 1 has 1. And then notice here that the master divides these talents based on the abilities of the servants. Here's a misunderstanding we often have when we look at this story, is that talents for us is just something that we have, something that we possess. No, that's not accurate. Talents are opportunities that are based on our natural abilities. You need to understand the difference. Talents, as applied to us, are not just our abilities. No. Talents are the opportunities based on our abilities. The talents distributed to these servants are distributed based on their natural abilities, opportunities based on their natural abilities. And notice the first guy here is an overachiever, right? This guy's up at the crack of dawn. He has his protein shake. He goes through his exercise routine. He puts on his nicely pressed clothing. He gets to work early. He greets everyone he sees. He has tremendous vision and oversight for his role. That guy gets 5 bags of silver. The second guy gets up right before the alarm goes off, not much before that. He gets in the shower. He has his routine. He puts on his pocket protector. He goes in to the office and he just does what he's assigned to do. He's faithful and he's good at what he does. He gets 2 bags of silver. The third guy rolls out of bed 15 minutes late, picks up a wrinkled shirt off the pile in front of the bed. He sprays a little bit of Axe spray on it on his way out the door, right? He has some bubble gum to suffice for brushing his teeth. He gets to the office. His hair is disheveled. He hardly knows what day it is. He gets 1 bag of silver. Talents are opportunities based on natural abilities, and the master here wisely and graciously gives to each of his servants what is commensurate with their abilities. In other words, he doesn't ask more of them than what they are able to do. All right? So we continue. Look at verse, where are we here? Hang on. 16. Today I'm playing the part of the third servant in case you haven't figured it out yet. All right? Check this out. So the servant who received 5 bags of silver began to invest the money, and he earned 5 more. And the servant with 2 bags of silver also went to work, and he earned 2 more. Here's the breaking of the pattern. You expect to hear, and the servant who received 1 bag of silver invested it and earned 1 more. The servant who received 1 bag of silver dug a hole in the ground, and he hid his master's money. And then check this out. The master returned after his long trip. What type of trip was it? A long trip. See the emphasis here? He's gone a long time. And after he finally returns from this long trip, he approaches his servants. He calls them to an account of how they used his money. And the servant to whom he had entrusted the 5 bags of silver came forward with 5 more and said, Master, you gave me 5 bags of silver to invest, and I have earned 5 more. He's overjoyed. He's enthusiastic. He's been anticipating his master's return. And when the master finally comes back, he can't wait to see him and to talk to him about how he was stewarded the master's possessions. The servant who had received 2 bags of silver came forward and said, Master, you gave me 2 bags of silver to invest, and I have earned 2 more. Same percentage of return. He's not begrudging the fact that he got 2 and the other got 5. He doesn't feel bad or insecure or disappointed in the fact that he only earned 2 and the other earned 5. No, he did exactly with 2 what the man with 5 did with his 5. And so he has the same measure of joy, the same measure of enthusiasm. And notice here, the servant with 5 and the servant with 2 hear these words from the master in verse 23. Well done, my good and faithful servant. You have been faithful in handling this small amount, and so now I will give you many more responsibilities. Let's celebrate together. May I just point out to you that the hyperbole of Jesus, the exaggeration of Jesus on full display. Do you notice the master comes back and he says with literally an amount of money that these 2 men could have never earned really in their lifetimes? Jesus says through this story, he says, the master replies, yeah, you've done well with this small amount. And now I'm going to give you more. If you're paying attention, that should shock you. Wait a minute, small. This is not, one guy got 5 talents, the other guy got 2. We're talking about millions of dollars in our economy. And the master says, you've done well with the little I entrusted you, now I'm going to give you a lot. Well, what's the master talking about? Well, of course, Jesus is telling a parable on the kingdom of heaven. Here's what Jesus is saying. What at times appears like a lot for us in this life is nothing compared to the glory and the reward in the life to come. He says, 5 talents, 100 years worth of labor. Psh, you've done well managing that little bit. Wait till you see what I have for you in the days to come. He says, you've done well, and so now you're going to have more to manage. Now I'm going to bless you all the more. He says, well done, my good and faithful servant. Now let's go to the third servant here, all right? 24, he says, the servant comes and he says, well, master, notice the change in the pattern now. We're going to see what comes at the end here. This is why Jesus is telling the parable here. Master, I knew you were a harsh man, harvesting crops you didn't plant and gathering crops you didn't cultivate. I was afraid that I would lose your money, and so I hid it in the earth. Look, here is your money back. And the master replied, you wicked and lazy servant. If you knew I harvested crops I didn't plant and then I gathered crops I didn't cultivate, why didn't you at least deposit my money in the bank? At least I could have gotten some small interest on it. Now that may seem like a harsh response to you, but I want you to see that this man absolutely wasted in selfishness what the master gave to him for this reason, okay? He, given the delay of the master's return, comes to the conclusion that he's not coming back, and instead of multiplying the investment and working hard and honoring the master, he comes to the conclusion the master's not coming back, and so he buries the treasure in a field, which is again a truckload of money, and only he knows where that treasure is buried. And when the master is proven to not come back, because at this point he's been gone a long time, he doesn't think he's coming back, that man can go and dig up that money himself, and he's going to keep it. That's why the master says, you're not just lazy, you're wicked. You aim to spoil the investment on yourself. And here's the worst part. This third servant is shocked at the master's return, completely unprepared. The master told him he was coming, but he didn't believe it. The delay convinced him that the master was never going to return, and therefore he squandered it in selfishness, thinking at some point he's going to keep it, and now he's in a world of trouble. And the worst part is, listen to me, he tries to blame it on the master. Well, I knew you were a harsh man, a cruel man. Really? Because if he were harsh and cruel, he would have expected for you to return 5 talents in the same way the first guy did. He didn't expect you to return 5. No, he gave you an amount based on your abilities. You have no excuse. He told you he was coming back. You have no excuse. If the master simply wanted his servants to bury the treasure in a field somewhere, he could have done that himself. It's implied in the distribution of the resources that an investment be returned, that a yield be given, that a return be produced before the master's return. That's implied in the distribution of the assets. If it's not implied, the master could have just buried the talents himself. He didn't need them to do it. And so you see here the wicked heart of this servant, the selfishness of this servant who, given the master's delay, is convinced that he can hide it and the treasure, and then he can just keep it for himself. And then here is the boom. What happens at the end? We've seen the exaggeration here with the money. It's a ton of money. We've seen here the break of the pattern. Now check it out, verse 28 and following. So then Jesus says this. So he ordered, take the money from the servant and give it to the one with 10 bags of silver. Give it to the one who was the most able and proved to be faithful. For to those who use well what they are given, even more will be given, and they will have an abundance. But from those who do nothing, even what little they have will be taken away. And now throw this useless servant into outer darkness where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. That is the end of the story. You say, Jesus, this is not how we do things here in 21st century America. We like stories with happy endings. You're supposed to be a little more positive, okay? It's not going to play well on television if you're preaching a message like this. I mean, Jesus, how are we going to sell books that end with, you're going to hell? See you later. You know, he who has ears to hear, let him hear kind of thing. Man, this is a sobering word. This is why Jesus says in Matthew 24, if you go back, when I return, the world will mourn. When I return, the world will be shocked. And so what about you and me? You and I need to understand that we are entrusted with gifts and resources in order to yield a return before our master's return. May I say it to you this way by way of application? You and I need to develop what God has deposited. You and I have the privilege, the responsibility to develop what God deposits in us. You know what God does for you and me? He gives us talents, opportunities that are based on our abilities, and it is our privilege to yield a return before his return. You see, this is implicit here. Jesus is urging us to productivity, to faithfulness, and to develop what God has deposited. Say, okay, how do I do that today? Well, let me give you just a couple of takeaways. I encourage you to take these down and ponder them this week. First of all, in order for you to develop what God has deposited, you have to make this statement. You have to own this. I will see myself as a manager and not the owner. I want you to understand this morning that God is the owner of all things. You and I don't own a single thing, not even the breath that is in our lungs. We are managers, not owners. We use the language of my house, my car, my life, my kids, my family, my job, my career, my retirement. I get it. We mean mine as opposed to yours. And I'm okay with that language as long as we understand that mine is not mine if I'm talking about God, because he's the owner. And he is good, and all that he entrusts to us and all that he asks of us with regards to our stewardship is good and for our good. Can I remind you what James 1:17 says? Whatever is good and perfect is a gift coming down to us from God our Father, who created all the lights in the heavens. He is the creator of all things, the giver of all good things. He gives us the use of his breath, space on earth, material resources, but they are not ours. I loved being a parent of smaller children and hearing my kids at times say, Dad, no, you cannot come into my room. Any of you ever experienced that? Well, that's funny. I don't remember seeing your name on the mortgage. No, Dad, you can't see what's on my phone. Try me. Yeah. That's my phone that I give you the use of. No, Dad, that's my car. I can drive it wherever I want. Yeah, it's your car. Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that's my car. And I'm happy for you to use it when you're not acting like the third servant in the parable of the talents. Isn't it the role of a parent to remind our children, especially when they're young? No. It's not your stuff, your house. No. I own that. The same is true for us. Listen, God is the owner of all that we have. All that he gives us is good. All that he asks us to do with what he entrusts to us is good. And we cannot make the same mistake as the third servant and think that just because our master is delayed, it seems like he's delayed in his return, that we're not going to be accountable for what our God has entrusted to us with respect to the good things he has given to us. If you would have asked the apostles if there would be a 2021, they would have said, absolutely not. Oh, Jesus is going to return way before that. If you had asked the reformers, will there be a 2021? Absolutely not. Jesus will come way before that. If you ask us, will there be a 2050, a 2121? I don't know, man. It seems like the time is getting near. Do you realize we've been in the last days for 2,000 years now? We are in the last days. There is no other major event on God's calendar except for the second coming of Jesus. We are in the last days. But hear the teaching of Jesus here. He's saying in the master's delay, there are going to be people who squander what the master gives to them. And in order for us to not fall into that trap, we have to first see ourselves as managers and not owners and understand that our master is coming back. And when he does, he's going to require an account of how we have managed what he's given to us. Matthew 24 says this, when the Son of Man returns, it will be like it was in Noah's day. In those days before the flood, the people were enjoying banquets and parties and weddings right up to the time that Noah entered his boat. People didn't realize what was going to happen until the flood came and swept them all away. And this is the way it's going to be when the Son of Man comes. Jesus, I'm telling you, I'm coming, and because of the delay, people are going to get lazy, people are going to make excuses, people are going to doubt the character of God. Jesus is saying to us through this parable, don't you doubt my character, don't you doubt my promises, don't you doubt my faithfulness. When I tell you I'm coming, I am coming. And there may be a delay, but make no mistake about it, I'm coming back. And therefore, those of us who are managers of what he's entrusted to us, better manage wisely and faithfully what he gives to us, because when he comes back, we're going to have to give an account. Secondly, make a note of this. We have to have this commitment. How do we develop what God has deposited? Well, you say, I will see myself as a manager, not the owner. Secondly, I will be faithful with the opportunities that arise out of my abilities. May I just encourage you today that your opportunities, your talents are given to you based on your abilities. If you're a 5-talent person, a 2-talent person, a 1-talent person, it doesn't matter. God's only going to hold you accountable for what he's entrusted to you, not what he's entrusted to anybody else. John Ryle once said this about these bags of silver, talents. He said, anything whereby we may glorify God is a talent. Our gifts, our influence, our money, our knowledge, our health, our strength, our time, our senses, our reason, our intellect, our memory, our affections, our privileges as members of Christ's church, our advantages as possessors of the Bible, all of these are talents. And again, we will be accountable for the use of them. Here's what Paul said in 2 Corinthians 5. He said, so whether we are here in this body or away from this body, our goal is to please God. For we must all stand before Christ to be judged. And we will each receive whatever we deserve for the good or evil we've done in this earthly body. What is Paul saying? Same thing Jesus is saying. The master is going to return. We should not be discouraged by his delay, but we should be diligent, developing what he has deposited, knowing that we will be accountable for what he's entrusted to us, because he's only entrusted to us the opportunities that are based on our abilities. Hey, can I just ask you to contemplate this truth this week in an age of social media where we're constantly comparing ourselves to others? It can be so discouraging at times to look at the lives of others and to see all of their best footage and highlight reels on social media when we look at our lives and our families at times and we think, man, I'll never get there. And sometimes if you're a 1 or a 2 talent kind of person, you look at a 5 talent person, and you know what happens in our society that's unique to the history of the world? All the 5 talent people are constantly posting their 5 talent pictures on social media. And it can be very, very discouraging. But here's the reality. None of us have it all together. All of us have unique challenges and issues. None of us are perfect. And we have the assurance that God's only going to hold us accountable to use what he's entrusted to us to use. And what he's entrusting to us is commensurate with our natural abilities and our natural giftedness. Listen, I love social media. It's fun, but I mean, we just have to have a reality check. Let me give you an example, okay? I brought a picture with me. This is like from, I don't know, several months ago, but we were over at the beach, and here's a picture of my wife and my 2 boys, and I don't think I posted this, but that is an Instagram-worthy photograph. Would you not agree? Now, can I tell you what happened right before this picture? My wife's like, boys, I'd like to have come on, let me get my picture. Oh, Mom, I don't want to get my picture. No, come on, guys, come on. No, I don't want to get a picture. No, come on, guys, come on. Boys, just get it. It's going to take 2 seconds. Just get, oh, I don't want to get my picture taken. Come on, guys, daggone it. Just get your stupid picture taken with your mother. So then let me show you what happened right before the Instagram picture, okay? This is what it looked like, okay? My youngest son took the hat off my wife, put it on himself. Now he looks like something you don't want to look like in today's culture. And then I finally get them together, and my oldest daughter's photobombing the thing. I'm like, can we not just get the picture? The sun's about to go down. This is what happened for a week before we finally got the Instagram-worthy photo. Has that ever happened to you? Those of you with young kids, is it not the truth? You just scream family photo time. Some of us are old enough, we used to go to Olin Mills or J.C. Penney, right? And then, I said just sit down and smile. Come on, everybody happy, 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 right? People walk in your house, they see that Olin Mills, they think, oh, you must be a 5-talent person. You went to Olin Mills, and say, well, yeah, no, I went to Sears because I'm a seminary student. And and then you do all this, right? And back and forth, and oh, what a beautiful photo. They don't see what happened, right, leading up to it. And social media just makes it 10 times worse now because we're always comparing ourselves to these highlight reels and these pastors and leaders and all their Bible quotes and all this stuff. And you say, oh, look how spiritual they are. And listen, we don't know what's really going on behind the scenes. Here's what we know. Here's the confidence you can have today. When Jesus, the owner, returns, he's only going to hold you accountable for what he's entrusted to you. He's not going to hold you accountable for what he's given to somebody else. Your talents or abilities based on opportunities based on your abilities, God's only going to hold you accountable for that. But I'm telling you, so many of us have incredible opportunities. Just incredible opportunities. And I think in this upcoming year at Bell Shoals, I think about what we can do across all 5 of our campuses if every single member of Bell Shoals maximizes the return on the master's investment. Just think about it. Think about the missionaries we can support. Think about the church planners that we could launch. You think about the local ministries that we can operate. Man, you just think about what we can do. I told you a few weeks ago, if every single giving unit at Bell Shoals gave just $50 more a month this year, if those of you who are connecting to our church and you've never really had a pattern of giving and generosity and leveraging even your dollars for kingdom work, if that happened, listen, just $50 a month from every giving unit, it's almost $1 million this year. Over and above where we are now, you think about what we can do in terms of maximizing kingdom. Listen, if we saw our careers as more than just something to put food on the table, if we saw them as opportunities to influence and invest, man, what if we saw our education? What if we saw our families? What if we saw our communities where we live? Man, I'm just saying, you've been given tremendous resources. Tremendous opportunities based on your abilities. Jesus is saying, do something with it. Don't be discouraged because I haven't come back yet. I'm coming. I'm telling you I'm coming. It's a long delay, but I'm coming back. And when I do, I'm going to ask you what you did with the talents that I gave to you. And so we must develop what he's deposited. How? Well, we have to see ourselves as managers, not owners. We have to be faithful with the opportunities that arise out of our abilities, not somebody else's, ours. And then lastly, we just make a note of this. Listen, I will work hard. We will work hard to multiply the owner's investment before his return. We have to work hard. He's going to expect a return. He doesn't want to come back and find you unprepared, caught off guard. No, he wants to come back and see us faithful, working, multiplying. These servants, these first 2 servants went to work. And you know what? So often, this is also true in our culture, so often we want the gift without the grind. We want the blessing without the burden. And I'm just telling you, if you think that Jesus is going to return and find you faithful and you're largely just sitting on your hands or you buried his gifts in a hole in the ground, man, be sad. Listen, we need to get to work. We need to be excellent with what we do. We need to serve. Listen, I'm grateful for the over 300 of you that, man, you gave up a lot of time this week to make VBS happen. And listen, the kingdom of heaven will echo your faithful service. Because we're going to see some people in heaven and share eternity with them because of what God did this past week. And you're a huge part of that. So, I couldn't take time off to be there, but I give and I support the ministry of Bell Shoals and I support the work of the church. You're part of the win. Every kid who got saved, every family connecting to our faith family. Listen, I'm just saying you got to get to work. Don't think that you're just going to get the gift without the grind. Listen, Jesus said these guys are working hard. They're multiplying the investment. And God, let me tell you something. God's not asking you for you to be the best that there ever was. You know what excellence is? Excellence is not being the best. Excellence is bringing your best. And all God's asking of you and me is that we bring our best. In our service, in our giving, in our influence, in our conversations, bring your best. Multiply what he's given to you. If you'll do that, goodness gracious, you'll be overjoyed at his return. Jesus comes back, man, you'll be one of the first to, yes, Lord, I'm so happy to see you. Look, Jesus, would you just look at the multiplying work of your kingdom here? Can I just be honest with you? I think for the last 60 years, the primary reason Jesus has had his hand on the ministry of Bell Shoals is because from day one, we have been a faith family that is about the kingdom of God. Supporting the work of missions, supporting the work of ministry, planning churches. Man, we haven't been about us. We have been about the kingdom of God. And when the Lord returns, it's going to be a faith family known as Bell Shoals. I want you to be a part of this, saying, yes, Jesus, look, God, look at what you've done. We're so excited to see you. We're so excited to share with you, to show you what's happened here. We're so happy you're finally back. That's our hope. I want that to be your hope.